Welcome to the Bill and Gypsy Show
Well, we turn your wedding dreams of sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows.
into amazing experiences as we make you the hero of your own story. And we, your trusted guides and our experienced guests, will help you create the weddings of your dreams.
Mr. Bill Hanson has been catering, oh baby, about over 10,000 weddings, starting back in the 1960s. And y'all, while he is just recently 75 years young, he is not retired or even considering retiring. He is so refired. His South Florida weddings at Villa Woodbine, the Sky Museum and Gardens, Deering Estates, and over 500 venues is sought after with those folks with very distinctive tastes.
And as far as Gypsy's concerned, there's a lot more to her than sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. She's lived weddings her whole life, and she knows what works, and she also knows what doesn't work. So if you're out there watching in YouTube land, and if you're excited, but at the same time, maybe a little confused, worried about how you're going to pull this off, tuning into this show will most definitely help you create those oohs and ahs that you really want your guests to have.
Well, every bride and groom dream of a beautiful, flawless wedding celebration. But in order to get there, what do you need? You need the guidance of an event director, planner, and designer. So on today's show, I am so excited to have Ms. Anna Noriega with Allure Event Firm, who is actually going to share with us her knowledge and experience and how to create that stunning event that everyone will remember for years to come. Again, it's my pleasure to introduce you all to Miss Anna. Anna, welcome to the show.
Mm. Yeah,
Thank
welcome, Anna.
you.
Woo! As we say, thanks for dropping by. Anna, you and I go way back. I think it's been maybe 15 years now, and you're only what, 24, 25 years old. So I think we shared a lot of events together. Yeah, and so here's the deal. Tell us a little bit why you're a good fit for couples. In other words, why does Allure Event Firm meet the needs of couples, and how do you go about doing it? And also, what separates you from the competition?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, there's a dime a dozen of people that do so many, jobs that we all do. But I think really what sets us apart is obviously our level of experience. My years prior to opening LRA go back to the corporate world. I was a director of marketing for companies like Fisher Island, and I also worked for Jordache. So I oversaw the opening of 4 hotels way back when the whole renaissance of Ocean Drive started. So my knowledge and expertise really provides couples with a lot of the behind the scenes that happen in the event world that a lot of other companies just don't have. We also focus on a very streamlined education process where we don't just want to, be there just for the couples, but we also want to be there for our venue partners and our vendors. It's very important to create that, very strong partnership. A lot of times planners go, I always kind of say, like, in the wrong direction where they are batting for the couples, but they forget that at the end of the day, they really have to also educate their couples. So for us, years of experience, obviously, that we bring to the table is proven itself to be really priceless. And then really our knowledge and just the world of design and being able to bring that together is very important. And I also explain that to couples. You may be hiring a planner, but that planner may not always be a designer. And the difference there is obviously in the knowledge of the spatial needs and how those needs work with the spaces and the events, how guest flow is really able to be manipulated, and creating those experiences is a completely different world than just kind of planning and going off of a checklist of the things that they may need.
Well, you brought up that fact that some folks don't realize when they hire a planner that person maybe just be a planner, just do the checklist, whatever, but not have that design background. So what do you feel then a couple's looking for when it comes to an event planner and designer? Do they want the whole ball of wax, or they want that person to work with them on their budget, again, work with the flow and what have you, and also become a designer? What do you feel like?
The couples today are looking more than ever for transparency, and I think that couples more than ever today are looking for, that hand-holding guide that's really going to be able to provide them the level of support in a multifaceted, aspect. So not just a designer, but also somebody that understands, where the world is going and can kind of foresee certain things in the future. Being able to stay ahead of the ball, I think, has proven itself to also be very, worthy for us, because we always work in the future. We're working today, but we're working on something that's happening a year from now, 2 years from now. So being able to bring all of those people, I think, is very important. But again, I do believe that there is a strong value in hiring, a planner that does have a design background. In our case, we do a lot of things in-house. So we do things like florals and production in-house. So there is even a higher, really elevated experience there, because you're able to not just offer guidance on, well, this does make sense in the space, this doesn't make sense, but you're also able to guide your couples on budgets, and monetary spend. A lot of times we'll get a couple and they just don't know. They don't know where that budget needs to be. They don't know where it is that they need to allocate certain funds. They don't know, how to prioritize that checklist of things that they may want. So I think that the more connected your planner is, and I say connected, not just like, oh, I know this person, I know that person, but really connected with the world of events, and the more knowledge that they have and understanding what may or may not work in a certain space, as well as what you can, kind of shy away from. So, we always get the question of like, well, where can I cut corners? And I'm always like, I don't like to cut corners, but if we have to, you have to have somebody that's experienced enough to know what can we remove from the formula without obviously jeopardizing the bigger picture, which is obviously the quality of your event.
So you brought up the money issue, and obviously we can talk about design and decor and oohs and ahs, but it always seems to boil down to the dollar sign, the budget. So could you maybe give some advice to our viewers as to perhaps what percentage of the budget, the total budget, should go towards, the design and decor, and what percentage of the budget should go towards your planning services, just to give them a general idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first and foremost, there's not really a magical number. We always try to scale the level of experience that each client is trying to achieve with the reality of what it would take to, to get there. And the reality is that while we obviously, theoretically speaking, can create anything at any budget, we still have to adhere to obviously the comp set. So the first thing we always want to look at is, where is it that we're trying to, to execute this event? Every certain demographical area is going to have much higher prices or lower prices depending on, what it is that they're looking at. If we're talking about South Florida, obviously we're a little bit higher in that price range, but then you have areas like Napa, which are astronomically even higher than we are. So, something in comparison here to there would not, it's not comparing apples to apples. So the first thing we want to talk about when we do budgets is we always talk about what areas and where it is that we're looking at. And then once we've kind of analyzed that, then we look at the bigger picture. We look at the guest count. The number one way to shed budget is to lower your guest count. Ironically, obviously, everything that's happening in the world, it's actually, and I've seen probably and I'm sure you guys have seen too, probably the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a shift from these mega, weddings that are 300-400 people to much smaller events that are still spending the same amount of money. They're just creating a much higher level of experience for themselves and their guests. So that has already been an ongoing trend, but I think where we are now globally, I think that's only going to continue to further push, that element. But in terms of budget, the bigger bulk of your budget is always going to go to food, beverage, and venue. And that's very important to acknowledge, that is always going to be the biggest bang there, in your budget. A lot of times couples will come and they'll put that on the bottom of the list. And I'm like, that's working backwards. We got to put that on the top of the list.
Yeah, we love that, Anna.
Yeah.
Being in the catering business, that's music to my ears. Real quick before Gypsy asks you the next question, but you mentioned Napa Valley, and one of the areas down here in South Florida, that is actually becoming the Napa Valley of Miami is the Redland. There are so many venues popping up down there that's unbelievable. So
we've been working with the Redlands for almost 10 years now, and I will echo your statements in saying that I remember 8 years ago when I was trying to push our couples down there, and I would get this like deer in headlights look, and it was like, where is this? You know, and the reality is that you're absolutely right. You can absolutely get those Napa Valley, you know, vibes absolutely here in South Florida. And they are just unfiltered, incredible views, beautiful open spaces, and just venues from garden to chic to pond to vintage, you know, everything to barn. So there's really a lot to be able to offer to our, you know, to our clients. And when it comes to design, if you want to talk about budget, you know, really design, I always leave last, because if you've got an incredible backdrop and you've got, you know, an incredible space, then design does not have to be something that's astronomical, because you're able to really go down that checklist correctly and you're building an experience for your guests. Ultimately, I always tell my couples, when you're walking into the event, when the event is over and that clock strikes, you know, end time and it's breakdown, you can't take anything with you, okay? A couple of people might steal a napkin or two, you know, but you can't take that centerpiece, you can't take that table, you can't take that linen, you know. What you've taken are the memories, and you've either created that wow factor in those experiences or you haven't. And so in order to build those experiences, it's less important to focus on that number and fixate yourself on that budget, and much more important to be able to put that budget into an experiential, you know, component for your event and build an experience through how you're planning that, you know, that event itself.
Actually, Anna, when you said about you can't take your centerpieces, you can't do this, it reminded me of a wedding that I did at the Hermitage Hotel in Nashville, where all of a sudden they're breaking down and the guests are literally taking the centerpieces, and I just didn't know how to say, no, you can't do that. That's not right. But I just didn't. I was just like, why are y'all taking centerpieces? But they did. But a lot of people don't realize the experience you have, not just here in South Florida, and you mentioned Napa, but all across the country and the world, which comes to now my next question, the current global situation. What is happening now with your brides and grooms? Are they still committing to having an out-of-the-country wedding? And if so, what are the limitations and so forth? Or should they not? Or should we just continue being here in this country? What do you foresee?
Yeah, questions. And I think really that'll come down to the fact of, you know, everybody's threshold level is different, number one. Obviously, other than the more important specifications that we have, you know, which are certain rules where, you know, certain citizens are not able to travel abroad and things like that. So yes, we have seen certain destinations, mostly honeymoons in relationship to Europe, that have been postponed, not necessarily canceled. But when it comes to places like the Caribbean, events that are taking place in Costa Rica, we do a lot of work in Mexico. The majority of those weddings that we have November on have not canceled. We still have them in the books. They have dwindled down their guest list. So, you know, numbers from 80 to 100 have come down to maybe 40 or 50 or 30 or so. But everybody, and it's important to say this, and I really constantly educate our clients on this. Everyone, no matter where it is that we're looking at, especially if it's, you know, a very sought after venue, they've taken measures to safely be able to host events. So, you know, we look at a place like Mexico, they have gone above and beyond in sanitation practices. Of course, certain measures like buffets and things of that nature has been, you know, adjusted where it's plated entrees. Certain social distancings are taking into place with the way that we're doing layouts in regards to seating. But those events are still continuing to book, and we are still seeing those leads continue to come in. I think what we are seeing is just the change in the level of magnitude of how many guests we're getting per event. So again, much smaller. And what we are seeing is people starting to book 2022 actually, and really looking at the future as to look, you know, a lot of things have been postponed this year. So when we look at next year, the year is hyper, like extensively amazing, and events on a Wednesday, Thursday, and Monday. But a lot of couples that have been holding off are starting to get that ball rolling again. And we are starting to see bookings, especially internationally, that we're looking at now, much into the remainder of next year and the following year. But a lot of places are just kind of going as business as usual. Mexico never shut down for business, for example. So places like Cancun, Riviera Maya, Tulum, those places are continuing to host events. They are allowed to have events with no cap, especially outdoors. So there are a multitude of ways. And even here, when we look at South Florida, you know, Dade County has a couple of different ordinances, but going just down into Monroe County, we have a wedding September 12th in Key West.
Right.
And that wedding takes place in the pier, and you know we're taking all the necessary precautions, but that wedding has not canceled, and it's a wedding we've had in the books since last year. So, and they're a full destination out of Michigan. So, you know, it really is a matter of, if you're not feeling comfortable, then I will also say that everybody is working with you on a new date and making sure that things are able to move, you know, safely. But I do urge couples to really continue booking, because the reality is, if there is a date that you're looking for, especially for next year, chances are it's just not available anymore. So, you know, you can always continue to postpone if you feel, you know, that you want to do that. But a lot of measurements have been taken into place. Staff get temperature checks everywhere, whether it's the, you know, the caterer, the DJ, the venue itself. People, of course, that are servicing your events are wearing masks and gloves, and you know, there's a lot of sanitation practices, and you know, that we've seen come into play. And we've just seen couples continuing to celebrate. I think that it's important to not, you know, stress the fact that there's not that many people that are canceling. I think for us, what we've seen is just more postponements than anything, but we are still seeing a large majority of bookings that are continuing to go along.
Perfect. I know that as a follow-up to that, I know that I think I appeared on one of your own Zoom shows. It was a workshop, and we discussed menu planning, I believe. So tell me a little bit about your workshops and why couples would benefit from coming online and sharing time with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a couple of different things. One going on now, I believe in almost 6 or 7 years, we've been doing our very, very sought after Alleray workshops. And that is everything from hands-on learning on how to make flower crowns, boutonnieres, to doing hands-on succulent terrariums. And we host them anywhere from 3 to 4 times a year, open to the public. And we've done them everywhere from West Elm, Deering Estate, to a lot of hotels and venues, the Doral Yard. And then, of course, we host them privately as well. So we do them for team buildings, and that has kind of shifted into also a virtual online component. So virtually, we're going now on almost a dozen that we've done since April. And we do them, like I said, for team building. Baptist as one of our large clients, where we do host monthly, you know, kind of virtual workshops with them. And then another thing that we're also offering is one-on-one sessions with our clients that are just looking for a consultation. And we are doing those virtually as well for people that may not want to meet, you know, in person. And that's important to know, because we don't charge for those. And we just really are there to provide a kind of understanding to our couples about what to expect in the industry, how we can help them moving forward, and really explain to them the value that we have, you know, for them going into the future if they decide to work with us. I think a lot of times, especially just on an initial consultation, and I'm sure you guys see this as well, you know, couples just don't know what to look for. They don't know what to ask. They don't know what those, you know, kind of checklist items are. And then, you know, they just think, oh, you know, I have the budget, and I have my venue, and I have my bridal party members, and I'm good, you know, but they don't think about certain added taxes, services. They don't think about certain layouts and how those layouts may affect things like linens and custom linens that may need to be made for certain table dimensions that they may want to bring in, you know, and how a lot of those things kind of create a, you know, a spiraling effect. So from a consultation call, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, I get a lot of sense of relief from the side of the clients, where at the end you just hear like this big breath of fresh air, and they say, oh my gosh, I feel like I could breathe again. Because the reality is that there's not a lot of knowledge. And I like to say also, you know, as much as we love websites like The Knot and things like that, it's also kind of a double-edged sword, because the education process that they get from there is coming from a writer. 9 out of 10 times, it's not somebody who's a writer in the industry that, you know, understands the actual industry. It's just a writer. So a lot of those articles that are skewed to, you know, to educate the client are sometimes actually hurting the industry. So it's important for them to really get to talk to all of us in that education process and hear it from our mouths the actual reality of how that may affect budget, pricing, and just the overall outcome of their event.
You brought an amazing point, or an excellent point. The fact of like a lot of some of these publications that have staff writers that don't know anything about the industry, and then they preach the you do it yourself, which is a no-no, to be honest. I mean, I know everybody's trying to cut corners and all, but it leads into, first of all, you're doing all the work.
Yep.
And you get exhausted. So when it comes wedding day, you're exhausted and all that. That's why it's so important to hire a professional. But with that said, what do you honestly see as the future for weddings now at this point? Just with every.
I mean, I've remained very hopeful throughout this whole process. And I think a few months ago, maybe back in April, Bill and I spoke, and I remember even, talking then and telling him that I really think that coming out of all of this, we're only going to see people wanting to celebrate more. I think that what we've really learned is the value of life and the appreciation for love. And I think that being able to, reunite yourselves again with the individuals that are so important to you that you perhaps haven't been able to spend time with now is only going to grow. And that ability to want to celebrate and be together and continue to celebrate is only going to really skyrocket. I think that once we get on the other side, which we've slowly, I think, been climbing that hill downward, we're only going to continue that trend. Now, where that trend is going to go, I still thoroughly believe, and I have been seeing this for many years away from even the pandemic, is the fact that people are wanting to choose experience over quantity. So I think that we're going to continue to see that push. We're going to continue to see, the whole micro wedding elopement push, where there are going to be smaller guest counts, be it 30, be it 40, and we're just going to continue to see that trend. And again, it doesn't mean that they're spending less per person. It doesn't mean that they're, shedding certain aspirations in those events. It just means that they're tailoring these events to just create a much more luxury and much more unique experience for their guests. And I think that also is something that we've seen reminiscent, not just here in South Florida, but destination couples anywhere. We're seeing the same trend with the Caribbean. We're seeing the same trend, with Mexico and South America. And that's the same, where people may not necessarily want to travel, certain guests, but other guests are absolutely okay. So, a guest list that maybe locally, in your hometown, maybe 100 has now become 50 or 60. So it's a good way to also be able for our clients to be able to narrow down their guest list and focus on those individuals that really want to be there. But with that, I always say there is a way to be able to still do that safely, and that's what we're here for. So, we want people to know that we're not just planning events, we're not just hosting events to just host them. We're obviously taking everything into mind as the situation changes day by day, but we're still very much looking forward to the fact that people, I think, are going to continue to want to celebrate. And I think they need to feel comfortable in knowing that when they book the right professionals, the right venue, the right vendors, that they're not going to have this fear of like, well, what if I need to move my date? What if I have to, and the couples ask me like, what if I decide I want to just have my event at home? Well, that's fine. We just move everything to your home, and I think in a case with something like you guys, Bill's able to cater anywhere. So, there is the level of comfort and understanding that you're not just going to lose this event.
Wonderful. Anna, you've been an amazing guest. And if I really wanted to, kind of summarize the future, you could put it like this: quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
Quality over quantity. So, Anna, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for sharing with us your wisdom and your knowledge and your talent. And for those of you that want to reach out to Anna, I know that all of her information will be put up on the screen, so you can reach out to Anna. I'd highly encourage you to do that. And I also ask each one of our viewers today to stay tuned, because next week we're going to have another show. It'll go up on Wednesday, and hopefully you will begin to like us. Number two, if you have a comment or a question, do so. And lastly, if you can, subscribe to the Bill and Gypsy Show channel. Gypsy Show channel. Sorry about that. So.
All right, thank you all. Thank you, Miss Anna, for being a part of our show today.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna.
So much for having me. We love you all, and we look forward to amazing events together.